Hello, and welcome back to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today we're going to be running for a bit of news centered around Bitcoin. We'll start off with a chart. We zoom in a bit here. If you've been watching the channel, you'd already noticed that we drew this trend line, and we said we sort of expected it to follow it up into this danger zone. We have since violated this trend line, so it would be reasonable to assume that we are going to be doing some consolidation in here. It's not the end of the world, but we just need to proceed with caution going forward because we don't know whether this is going to chop sideways, whether this is going to make a new high. We could end up having a sort of less steep trend line now. I still stand by my thesis that this is going to be a real difficult area of resistance to get above, but I still think that we can make it up here. I don't know whether it just takes a bit longer, but I'm not expecting this just to roll over and crash to new lows anytime soon. Okay, so let's have a look at some news. We've had this. The SEC has approved a Bitcoin futures ETF. It's not the first Bitcoin futures ETF, and it's not a spot ETF. The difference being, of course, the futures are cash settled, whereas a spot ETF would be Bitcoin settled, and you have to actually buy the Bitcoin in order to buy the ETF. For every portion of the ETF bought, it would have to be weighted 1-to-1 with actual spot Bitcoin. So the futures ETF's not as important, let's say, as the spot ETF. But what is quite interesting is they've gotten this current futures ETF. They've got this approved under a different Securities and Exchange Act than the previous ones that have been filed under this one. And according to this, that is paving a slightly different regulatory pathway towards the approval of a spot Bitcoin ETF. And it sort of follows on from this news a week ago, in which I saw that Grayscale Investments, they are looking to convert their GBTC into a spot ETF. And they even went as far as to say that they might actually sue the SEC if it rejects its application for a spot ETF. So hopefully we can actually see one soon. Of course, why do we want one? Well, we want one because it put an enormous bid underneath the Bitcoin price. So having a spot ETF means that people in pension funds, insurance companies, and people with like stocks and shares ISAs and that sort of traditional finance accounts will be able to buy spot Bitcoin over things like the New York Stock Exchange and potentially other sort of mainstream exchanges, which will in turn allow for enormous capital inflows into Bitcoin and thus lifting Bitcoin's price, since the total number of Bitcoin is of course capped at 21 million. So more inflow with the same amount of total supply will lead to price appreciation for Bitcoin. We've also had this Bitcoin 2022 news. The price has dipped right as the largest Bitcoin conference in the world gets underway. So we are right now in the middle of Bitcoin Miami. Every year they hold one of these Bitcoin conferences, and all of the biggest Bitcoin proponents and evangelists get together from around the world to talk about Bitcoin and to help drive adoption. But if you're a bit worried about the price action of late, just know that this is absolutely typical of Bitcoin. Every year when these guys get together and hold their Bitcoin conference, the price does sell off sharply. I don't know if this is Wall Street giving them an FU, or whether it's just because an awful lot of the whales are attending this and therefore they're not trading the Bitcoin, so the order books are thinner. I don't really know, but it is nothing to worry about. They do the price does dip every time there is one of these conferences, and it happens every year. I did see this. I thought this was interesting. Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, giving a talk. You kind of come to expect that. Him and the likes of Max Kaiser, also the PayPal founder Peter Thiel will be giving a talk, and the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. Although unfortunately, if you scroll down, it does say that that Nayib was unable to make it due to unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, so I'll be looking forward to see what comes out of there over the next few days. Okay, so we've also got JP Morgan saying that Bitcoin shows some merit as a store of value. So this is always interesting to me. These people have done nothing but badmouth Bitcoin over the years, but of the last over the last, say, 2 years, they have done somewhat of a pivot on Bitcoin. JP Morgan has launched 2 new monthly research reports in the crypto industry, including one on markets and one focused on Bitcoin mining. So that's just nice to see that the mainstream banks are not totally against Bitcoin anymore, for better or for worse. Just a quick reminder, I've already covered this on the channel a video or two ago, but the UK is of course pushing to become a global crypto hub, so expect some more exciting news to come out of here. We also had this from Cointelegraph. They're sort of saying that the Bitcoin mid-halving price slump will play out differently this time. And the crux of their argument is that if we can get above 50k by April 11th, then that would be okay. They would be okay with saying that the traditional 4-year cycle is broken. For those of you who don't know about this 4-year cycle, I got an image of it here for you, with the pink vertical lines denoting the halving cycle for Bitcoin. So this would be when we went from 25 Bitcoin per block as the block reward to 12.5, and then again to 6.25, with the next one approximately 4 years from this date, halving the 6.25 Bitcoin once more to 3.125 Bitcoin per block. And so the theory is, each time the Bitcoin protocol halves, less Bitcoin is released into the ecosystem, and therefore it becomes scarcer and scarcer, or should I say more deflationary, every 4 years. And it's believed this is one of the biggest contributing factors to the price appreciation, in that the total amount of Bitcoin available halves every 4 years, whilst demand is increasing at a rate faster than the adoption of the internet. So they are saying that if the price can get above 50k by April 11th, then they could say well and truly that the market cycle is behaving differently this time. But I think the point they're trying to make is that if we can't breach 50k in the next week or two, then this cycle is much the same as the others, and therefore we should likely expect lower prices. They've got their schematic here, in which they're sort of pointing at this and saying that, oh, we should be due a drop anytime now. So maybe we get that, maybe we don't. I don't see it personally, but of course I could be wrong. Interestingly enough, contrary to all of this, this is, I guess, what you'd call the bear thesis, in that this sort of suggests that we're going to get a price drop. Of course I could be wrong. I don't agree with this. I think that we are on track to walk upwards. And Willy Woo, an absolute pioneer in the on-chain analysis and on-chain metrics space, I remember quite some time ago he was calling for the last cycle, and when he said this, I have to admit it did sound a little bit crazy at the time. He was sort of projecting that we've had our cycles up, and now there would be no more 4-year cycles, and that we'd instead get this sort of random walk up to $1 million per coin. I have to admit, when he said this back here, it did seem a little bit far-fetched. But if you have watched my prior video on Bitcoin and why massive price appreciation is still to come for Bitcoin, you'll know that this is sort of what I'm expecting as well, based on the adoption of Amazon, as Amazon became the dominant network. And I believe that this is certainly in play, and I am actually favouring this outcome over this one. So that was always nice to see. And then lastly, this has been in the news as well, Bitcoin Pizza Day. What is Bitcoin Pizza Day? Well, I'm pretty sure it's not until the 22nd of May. Yeah, 22nd of May. But this is a day that is celebrated in the Bitcoin community, of course, before Bitcoin had any real value. The first recorded transaction using Bitcoin, where somebody wanted to exchange Bitcoin for something real and something tangible. And so on a forum, somebody arranged to buy 2 large pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins. And this was the first sort of recorded example of somebody exchanging Bitcoin for something real in the real world, somebody actually being able to spend Bitcoin and get goods delivered. of course, the day is remembered not only for that, but also because 10,000 Bitcoin at today's value is around $450 million. Of course, there's no way of knowing back then that the price would be worth that. And I've seen interviews with the gent that bought the pizza since, and he said that he has no regrets about it. But yeah, so that is coming up. So make sure you mark your date in the calendar, May the 22nd, and have a pizza to remember the time somebody spent 10,000 Bitcoins on 2 large pizzas. So that's going to be it from me. Just a little bit of Bitcoin news. Don't be too scared. Don't panic. Everything's going to be okay. It always is. Remember. I'm your boy Camel. If you liked what you saw here, please do subscribe. Drop a like on the video. That helps YouTube recommend it to other people. I'd appreciate that. And in the meantime, take care. Bye bye.